Hello, fabulous friends and fans. Welcome to your horoscope for the week of April 13th, 2014. I am your astrologer, Nadiya Shah. Thank you for being here. Well, this week we have an activation moment in a configuration that a lot of astrologers are talking about called the Cardinal Grand Cross. Now, in one form or another, this conversation is being activated since 2012, will continue to be into 2015, and is a symbol of our changing times. Now, those of you out there who are part of my newsletter through my website, first of all, I thank you so much for that. But also in that newsletter, I spoke about this particular configuration. But I'm still getting a lot of messages from you guys out there on social media and through my website, nadiyashah.com, about this, and that there's a lot of fear, and there are a lot of people out there who may be saying things that we really need to watch out. And so I do want to first and foremost say that I am very, very much of the belief that we participate in the unfolding of the universe, that we are part of that, that the sky isn't something out there being done to us, but that as part of this collective move that we all have towards greater love and greater wisdom, an individual move towards that as well, greater love and greater wisdom, the universe will allow us to glimpse, as part of the mystery, some of what is happening with us on levels of spirit as represented in the symbols in the sky. But we always have choice. We have choice as to how we are going to access that energy to our advantage, or if we're just going to kind of go along and let the energies happen to us as other people make their choices. So really it ends up being that the people around us are utilizing these energies in the way that they believe is moving them towards greater love and greater wisdom. And either we are going to consciously choose ourselves, or we're going to allow the choices of others to determine how we are reflections of what's taking place in the sky. I'm very much of the belief that you cannot have the astrology without the astrologer. And what that means is you, as the astrologer or astrology student, me and myself as an astrologer and a student of astrology throughout this lifetime, will always bring myself to the sky. And who you are determines everything that you perceive, including the symbols in the sky, and therefore your interpretation of everything that you perceive, including the symbols in the sky. So a lot of people are saying, oh my goodness, please be careful as they look at this configuration. But I see this Cardinal Grand Cross as a part of each of us getting in touch with that part of us that knows where it is that we need to begin again, where it is that we desire a change and a fresh start. And as a result of this energy, as demonstrated in this configuration, we are collectively and individually summoning the courage to do so. And there are a lot of different ways that this energy can manifest, but mainly one of the main things I've seen is, as part of this, there tends to be some discontent that is sacred. Discontent is always sacred because it helps you to become aware of where it is that you believe you desire not only change, but where maybe you've settled for less, or you've demonstrated yourself to be less than you know you could be. And as part of that, what we also have happening, really what I find really interesting, is as these really tough configurations are taking place, they are happening simultaneously with some really inspiring configurations as well. So let me break this down. In the early part of the week, we have Mercury speaking to this entire configuration, slowly but surely in the first few days. What we also have is Pluto standing still, preparing to go backwards. And then on Monday or Tuesday, depending on where you are on the planet, we will experience a lunar eclipse, the first of two eclipses that will take place, a solar eclipse 2 weeks later. And so what I find really interesting about this eclipse is that it's taking place in the later part of the sign of Libra. Now, when this happens, it tends to suggest that, now it's not just that it's in the later part sort of eclipses that take place towards the end of a sign denote more important endings than otherwise. But a lunar eclipse, which is essentially a full moon eclipse, denotes an ending, denotes culmination, fruition, denotes an acceptance of what has served its purpose. But what I find really intriguing about this is that this particular eclipse is not making any classical aspects, if you will, to other power players in the sky. So it's basically hanging out on its own, doing its thing. And what we have is this long going sort of process taking place at the same time as this eclipse is happening, which is the cardinal grand cross. And what you've also got is Pluto, the planet of life, death, rebirth cycle. And to the ancients, an eclipse, a lunar eclipse, was the life, death, rebirth cycle as well, because Pluto is discovered relatively recently in line with our human history. But what I find really interesting is that what I believe is taking place here for all of us in our own way is that it's very likely that because Mercury does sort of oversee messages and random interactions and random conversations, but also the exchange of information as well, I do think that what's most likely to happen here, given all these, if you put them together, to me, I interpret this as random interactions or messages or posts or things that we see online. They end up reaching within us in a certain way. Maybe before we've seen these before, maybe we've had these type of conversations before, but there's something about this moment where just seeing it or hearing it or interacting with it has a shifting purpose, has an effect. More accurately, probably pushes some sort of button. And almost immediately we are able to see what has been done, what has been in the past. And with this eclipse, we are asked to accept and let go. That's ultimately how I see this happening. And also with Pluto standing still, preparing to go retrograde, when a planet is going retrograde, its energies become more reflective. It becomes much more about the personal aspect of that planet. And with a planet like Pluto representing life, death, rebirth, representing power, standing still, when a planet is standing still, it is at its most potent. You put all this together and it does suggest to me that we recognize that what is taking place actually needs to happen so that we can have our closure. But even if there's resistance to that, I do think by the time we get to the eclipse, by the time the eclipse reaches you, you should feel a shift in energy, should feel an acceptance along with a release, and that immediately gives way to blessings. And I say this because Venus will be speaking in harmony with Jupiter. Jupiter has classically been associated with wisdom as well, and along with Saturn, but in their own way, they go about it in different ways. Jupiter tends to bring it about in a way that's a little bit more inspiring, a little bit more hopeful than Saturn necessarily would. However, we've got Venus speaking in harmony with Jupiter. We've got Venus speaking in harmony with Pluto as well, as Pluto standing still. And this suggests to me that almost immediately we see the benefit of making the shift. Almost immediately we see what can actually be made stronger and what actually can move towards love. And we can see ourselves moving towards greater love and greater wisdom as a result of the changes that are being inspired to be made. Really, as I said earlier, what you perceive is going to determine much, if not all, of your experience. I'm very much a believer in this. And it really is wherever it is that your perception has become stagnant or your perception has become pessimistic, that a light is going to come on. And once that shift comes in the middle of the week, it's going to be up to each of us individually to choose whether or not that shift is going to move us in a more hopeful direction or not. If you can embrace that possibility that maybe in your own way, and in my own way as well, in our own lives, if we do what we can to access the highest form of this energy, the highest intention, the hope, the possibility, the opportunity really to start fresh, to let go of and shed dead skin where we no longer need it, and to start fresh in this life in the most hopeful manner that things can be different, things can be better if we let go of what we know long ago served its purpose. I think we're going to find not only ourselves as individuals moving towards greater happiness, but also we're contributing to the happiness, the love, and the wisdom of the collective as well. How all this speaks to your sign is coming up right now. Hello, fabulous Aries. Well, this week we have Mercury standing across the sky from your ruling planet, Mars, and you are a cardinal sign as well, as I mentioned last week. And so all these shifts and changes that I spoke about in the introduction will speak to you very profoundly and very importantly. And they're really representing you, more than anything, being honest with yourself about at least one alliance that has to do with your choices in partnerships, specifically love. So if you're with a partner, it seems like sort of a make or break moment when you're deciding how much further this is going to go. If you are not with somebody right now, then this has to do with understanding love and the choices that you've made in love, and understanding how maybe some forgiveness needs to happen. Because ultimately, I do believe that forgiveness is one of those really core archetypal human experiences that we all have to go through as part of individuation, as part of truly becoming who it is that we were created to be, that we're meant to be. And I think that you take huge leaps in that process, whether it's forgiving yourself or someone else. You let go of a bag of anger, and that in turn opens you up to experience greater love. There will be a change in circumstances as well, but that change is going to come as a result of what's happening within you. As I said in the intro, there's a shift happening, but it's been a long time coming. Hello, fabulous Taurus. Well, this week we have your ruling planet, Venus, speaking in harmony at the later part of the week with other power players in the sky, mainly with Jupiter and with Pluto. I look at this configuration and I can't help but feel that even with all the sort of early week drama taking place, I think that it's largely going to just sort of work itself out on a level of energy, given the areas of the chart, given the areas of the sky that this particular configuration, the Cardinal Grand Cross, is speaking to. I do think a lot of this is going to play out on a level of energy, on a level of body as well, and how you're feeling. And I think that you are likely to notice a shift in the way that you just feel in your own skin taking place for you this week as well. What's very likely now is that some sort of, whether it's been a health habit or something you've been doing that maybe you didn't realize was working to your detriment, or maybe actually you've known for a while has been, you're now going to be ready to let it go. You're now going to see the answer that's been staring you in the face of how you can make the change that you need to make that will ultimately end up empowering you greatly. But what I really like about this week, as I said, is because we have your ruling planet speaking in harmony with all these other power players, it suggests to me that you're able to ride the week very, very well, that you're able to see sort of the proverbial light at the end of the tunnel. And I don't think you're likely to get as caught up in any drama as maybe other people around you might. If there is any being caught up, if you will, I think that it's likely to happen, as I said, on a level of energy, on a level of the dream space. You'll be releasing a lot of stuff, but on a level of your consciousness and what's happening in your awareness, there are people around you, you're feeling a lot of love around you, you're feeling a lot of possibilities as well. Friends are really there for you as well, and it looks like you are able to make that connection relatively quickly into what maybe looks a little bit challenging on the surface is actually pointing the way to what is truly magnificent. Hello, fabulous Gemini. Well, it is your ruling planet, Mercury, that is having all these active conversations. And I tell you, I really think that you are one of the signs this week that is going to experience a shift that is particularly notable. But I do think it's for you on a level of mind. It's likely to be something clicks within you and you get it, the proverbial get it. And I think that it may have been something that so far you felt, so far you maybe even been dreaming about, you've been sort of intuitively having a feel for, but now, once we get you towards the middle of the week, the early and middle part of the week, as your ruling planet is having all these key conversations, it does suggest to me that the universe is really trying to get you to get it, whatever it is that you need to understand so that you can move your life forward, and in some cases powerfully so. Do remember though, you are being set up very nicely for some more positive and hopeful occurrences to occur just a little bit further down the road. And so when I see all this stuff happening, in particular when I think about how right now Venus is trying to bring in blessings where it comes to achievement, where it comes to your career, and when I think about how once we get you a little bit further, we're going to be welcoming a new moon in your sign a little over a month down the road. And it does suggest to me that this time is especially powerful for you because you're receiving the information that you need in order to really understand how it is and what it is that you are meant to do next. Before the next thing becomes crystal clear, there is going to be some releasing that needs to happen, some letting go that needs to happen. And really, I think a lot of it is going to be rooted in you deciding what you are going to give your verbal and mental energy to, and whom you are going to communicate with more and whom you are not. It's like you're making a decision where you're deciding, you know what, it's worth continuing talking to this person because of what ideas are brought forward, or maybe you're talking to this person out of some obligation, but really the energy there is not so good. Regardless, it does look like you are making a decision as to the information that finds you. First, you've got to be really open. Let the message find you, and then you'll start to filter out what doesn't matter to you now and what especially doesn't matter to the future you that you are becoming. Hello, fabulous Cancer. Well, this week you are one of the cardinal signs, as well as I mentioned last week. So there's a lot of activity happening for you, especially Jupiter moving through your sign and your ruling planet, the moon, or actually it's a luminary, but your ruling symbol in the sky, your celestial representative, having an eclipse moment. Now, whenever there are eclipses, this is especially important for you because it does represent a shift for you. And so I do think, as I look at this, that it's very likely that you are going to come to find some understanding of your home base and what you need to feel safe and secure, where you need to find your comfort, who's really down for you, you know, who's really family, whether it's your actual family or whether it's who feels like family. That's what's being defined with this particular lunar eclipse. And it isn't just about that, but it goes right to the heart of you, where something very important to you is coming forward. New ideas are coming in. You're being asked to look at the world in new ways. And this is all, to me, very inspiring and very hopeful as well. You are one of the signs that is going through a major shift in self-definition, a major shift in possibility that's going to touch on just about every area of your life. Well, this week does take you notable steps towards that. And it does look like you are coming to the understandings you need as to what you need to feel really safe in the world and feel really safe now. And I also really like that at the same time, you're very connected to inspiration. You're very connected to a vision, as that is manifesting for you at the same time. This is a really good example of how the personal is sort of rather, let me say the micro is the macro. What's happening with you on levels of you and your emotions is being reflected in your career, in your world, in your love and relationships. All of it, your money, all of it is sort of being fed off each other, and you are being inspired to see how connected your life is. And if you start with you and what you need in your most basic levels, you'll find that everything else has a way of just falling into place very nicely. Hello, fabulous Leo. Well, this week there is a lot of energy taking place in fellow fire sign Aries. And when I look at how Mercury is moving about there, speaking with the Cardinal Grand Cross, I do consider this to be a time when this whole idea of messages is going to be especially important now. But more than that, what I think is that you're not likely to be one of those signs that, whereas if you just look at what Mercury is doing, as I said in the introduction, it's like having our buttons pressed. But buttons only get pressed when they touch on truth. And it's going to be up to each of us individually to decide if this is a truth that we want to accept and therefore have the power to change, or if we want to disown it and project it. And so what I think is really interesting about what's taking place for you is that because Mercury's moving through fire sign and a part of the sky that has to do with vision and inspiration for you, it does suggest to me that you are one of the people who, it's not just about navigating it, but it's about not having your buttons pressed. It's about getting the information and seeing very quickly how this can actually help you to progress your life forward and to move yourself in a more positive direction. In particular, wherever it is that, and I do think, you know, I've spoken about this, especially on my website, I've spoken about Pluto in the sign of Capricorn for a very long period of time, started at the end of last decade, will be throughout this decade and into the next. But I have said that this configuration or this particular movement of Pluto in Capricorn speaks to credentialism. And the part of the sky that's being activated for you right now by Mercury has to do with earning the credential. And the part of the sky that Pluto in general for us as a collective is activating has to do with benefiting from the credential. And so when I see that this is so linked for you right now, and how you are on a lot of levels preparing for a brand new chapter that's coming up just a little bit further down the road, I can't help but feel that you are one of those people who may see other people trying to push your buttons, or you may see how on the surface, okay, this is something that might push my buttons, but you're not going to allow it to, especially in the moment. And very quickly you see how actually you can be very empowered by this. And I do think that there's a percentage of you out there who are going to consider what role having a credential, what role that credential will play to the goals that you have for your life, or the vision you may have for your life, how that is going to play out. So some of you are going to decide to embark on that journey rather suddenly. Some of you are going to decide to leave that path rather suddenly as well. But regardless, I do see this wonderful sort of detachment happening for you now, and I'm going to invite you to stay with it, okay? Because I know that sometimes in the moment there can be that detachment, but then after the fact, when you think about it a little bit more, you go, oh wow, I can't believe that happened, and you get riled up. Don't do that to yourself, okay? There's no reason for that. In the moment, you behave in a way that is truly honorable, and you see how this is empowering you. And if you run with that energy very quickly, before we even get you to the end of the week, you are benefiting from your choices and noticing these blessings just showering on you as a result of the choices that you make in the early part of the week. You notice how the universe is really propelling you forward and trying to shift your life in the most positive ways. Hello, fabulous Virgo. Well, your ruling planet Mercury is speaking to a lot of different power players this week. And the thing is, your ruling planet Mercury is also the ruling planet of Gemini. However, astrologically speaking, traditionally speaking, your planet with Mercury is considered really your ruler as night aspect. And what that means is, or what that's symbolic of, is sort of another face of Mercury, if you will, another expression of an archetypal energy. And so for you, this has to do with analysis. This has to do with retrospection, with understanding deeply. Ultimately, that is the higher understanding of your sign as represented by your ruling planet in its night aspect. So we've got Mercury making all these different contacts, all these different connections. But what I find especially intriguing is that Mercury is going to be speaking with Pluto. And Pluto is standing still right now, or standing still as it's having this conversation with your ruling planet. And Pluto is placed in a very harmonious position in your sky. I put this together, and it does suggest to me that you are understanding sort of a truth. I think partly you could even say it's like a secret truth that has been there, that maybe you've been keeping even, but it's just about the full awareness and acknowledgement of it. This also could be a time of financial talks as well. This could be a time of where you're encouraged to make some financial resolutions, whether this has to do with settlements or whether this has to do with severance packages, and all that opportunity certainly seems to be there on the surface. It seems to be that you might not have total control over everything. However, because of these different placements taking place, as I said, with Mercury, your ruling planet, speaking with a Pluto that is ultimately in a very harmonious place to you, it does suggest to me that you navigate these energies quite well, and you do, over the course of this week, move yourself towards greater prosperity. Really, I do think that some of you out there could notice it's almost as if the negotiation comes, and then at the beginning of the week, and then the check comes by the end of the week. For some of you out there, it's going to be like that. But of course, it could be metaphorical as well, where some negotiations come as to what you need, what your essential needs are, what resources you need to access. And by the end of the week, everything is cleared up, and you see that actually the universe is supporting you through people, institutions, whatever. You will find that the universe certainly is rushing support towards you of every kind. Hello, fabulous Libra. Well, you are one of the cardinal signs as well. So all this activating of the cardinal grand cross is going to speak to the heart of you. And I do think that this is a time when you are one of those people who's being asked to be really honest with yourself. And it's not just that. I don't want to downplay the importance of an eclipse happening in your sign. And I actually spoke about this at length in the monthly horoscopes. And I would invite you to look at those again, because this is going to be a time when those themes discussed there become especially amplified. So we have this eclipse taking place in your sign. And as I said in the introduction leading up to it, there's a lot of moments of honesty. And I think for you, those moments of honesty are going to play out largely in terms of partnership, in terms of love, but it looks like people are a key element in this. Don't forget that with this cardinal grand cross, okay, the points in the sky that are being activated for you with your sky, it does suggest a time when you are being redefined, reborn, reconsidered. You are the one who's really making shifts and preparing to launch in new directions in just about every area of life. And this week is a very important part of it. In fact, I do think that this week, a series of events could begin to take place. For some of you last week, some of you this week will experience the start or the acceleration that really you'll look back on for many years to come and see how this was a time that really shifted the trajectory of your life and put you on a whole other path. You are one of those people who is about to understand what it means to really feel a shift, to feel washed clean, to feel like an acceptance happens that you know has been a long time coming. Now, as I said in the introduction as well, because of the way that this particular eclipse is placed, I do think that this isn't about something new and out of the blue coming. This is about something that's already been there for a long time, and it's just about acknowledging it. It's just about facing it and saying, okay, I see you. Yes, I'm ready to accept this piece of information. I'm ready to accept who this other person is, so that you can make a decision whether or not they're going to walk into the future with you. One thing is for sure, though, you are leaving a part of your identity behind. That's how important a time this is. You are making a shift where you are deciding what goes with you in the future, but more importantly, who you no longer are. And as a result, what will not go in the future with you, or possibly who will not go into the future with you. Embrace this time. It really is very special for you. You really are one of the lucky ones right now, because, as I said, you'll look back and realize how much better off you are in the big picture of your life as a result of the events that are transpiring right now. Hello, fabulous Scorpio. This week, your modern ruling planet, Pluto, will be standing still in the sky and begin going backwards. And as Pluto is doing this, Pluto will be speaking with other power players in the sky, including a very busy Mercury and Venus as well. Now, what I find especially hopeful is that, as I spoke in the introduction, a lot of people are going to be feeling like their buttons are being pressed, and they can decide what they're going to do with that pressing and how it is that that ultimately is touching on some truth. But what I find really interesting about this configuration and about how it's speaking for you is, I do think that you are going to be one of those signs who sees the hidden dynamics as everything is playing out. So as you're seeing other people get their buttons pressed, you'll see how they're actually benefiting from being in some sort of a frenzy or hurt space, what's happening with them. You'll see how the hidden motivations are playing out in terms of the people who may be doing the pushing of buttons. And this in turn is going to allow you to really look at, not only in other people's lives, but in your own life, what are some underlying dynamics that maybe you haven't been acknowledging before. Ultimately, what we do have taking place is we've got this eclipse happening in the sign just before yours. And that part of the sky for you has to do with karmic endings, really understanding what has served its karmic purpose in your life. When a lunar eclipse takes place there, you see a truth that's been there for a very long time. You just didn't want to fully accept it, and you understand that now you truly are ready to let go of that part of your life. And especially considering that as this is taking place, we've got Venus speaking in harmony with your ruling planet. Well, I put these together, and it does suggest to me that you are definitely one of the signs who almost immediately is going to see how whatever is taking place, whatever is ending, whatever is shifting is actually really, really good, is actually moving you towards a more inspired future. And you are one of the people who's going to feel yourself moving towards greater love, perhaps more than most, really almost immediately. The type of conversation that Venus and Pluto are having is called, for those students of astrology out there, it is called a sextile. And what this conversation indicates is an understanding that a blessing is one thing, right? Sometimes things just sort of fall in your lap, which is great. And that's ultimately a trine. Trine is the type of conversation that does that. But a sextile is more like you're pointed the way towards an opportunity. You're like, okay, here, if you go here, you could get a key. And then if you take that key and you go over there, there's a lock. And you can use that key. And that in turn can allow you to open the door to a lot of blessings and a lot of growth and a lot of development of talent that's going to help you for a very, very long time to come. That's the type of energy that we deal with when we look at a sextile. And so what you have taking place for you is your ruling planet getting this very sweet boost towards the end of the week, as it is in a very potent position, which is standing still, slowly changing directions, preparing to go backwards. And I look at this and it does suggest to me that the reflection and the introspection that you're able to do as a result of seeing the hidden dynamics very quickly are showing you how actually you're not only benefiting in the moment and what looks like to be the immediate benefits, but more largely, more in an all-encompassing way. You're able to benefit in terms of understanding how to move your life in a direction that feels more fulfilling, that feels like this is where you're supposed to be going. And if you can embrace that possibility, I do think that you are going to be one of those people who finds that the universe is really working with you here. Okay, the universe really is trying to get you to shake free of the past that has served its purpose so that you can embrace the opportunities that are coming up now to bring more positivity, to bring more blessings, to bring more money and more love into your life as well. Hello, fabulous Sagittarius. Well, this week there is the promise that you are going to be one of those signs that finds that friendships are going through a major adjustment here. And I do think that as all this energy and all these things are happening in fellow fire sign Aries, with Mercury moving through there, activating the cardinal cross as I spoke about in the introduction, I do think that you are going to be one of those signs who very quickly is able to see how all of this is actually fitting in the people in your life and the sense of personal mission and personal fulfillment you have, how it all fits in so that you can experience a greater sense of self-actualization. And I think that conversations are going to be a huge part of this as well. So I would invite you to be open to that, because it does look like as friendships are shifting for you, at the same time, you are coming to understand who you are very differently in this whole process. Remember, your ruling planet is a part of this special configuration happening, but then later on in the week, your ruling planet, Jupiter, is also speaking in harmony, in supreme harmony with Venus. And I look at this and it does suggest to me that regardless of what seems kind of tense and what you can't put your finger on, and how a friend said something or did something that kind of you didn't like and it rubbed you the wrong way, by the time we get you to the later part of the week, you are able to just see so clearly what it is that you need to do, how it is that all this is really great, how it is that one door closing is allowing a lot of other doors and windows and possibilities to just open up in front of you. And I do think that you are one of the signs who's very likely to see how all of this is actually contributing to an expanded sense of wealth and a greater sense of value. A lot of your relationship, as I've said before, your relationship around money has been healing over the past few months, and this is continuing now. And I do think that this week is a part of that journey. And a part of that is understanding abundance and what that's going to mean for you. Stay open to the whole process, because it does look like you are being set up very, very nicely when I look at what's taking place a little bit further into the year. And I do think that once Jupiter changes signs in the summer, really you are going to be one of those people who really notices how all this stuff happening right now, all these movements happening right now are going to be part of a big lift that comes to you later. And I think that lift that is coming up ahead, you'll get a little glimpse of it at the end of this week. And I think you're going to find it inspires you and really makes you very hopeful, as it rightfully should. Hello, fabulous Capricorn. Well, you are one of the cardinal signs, as I said last week, and as a cardinal sign, I do think that there is an understanding here, a possibility here that the shifts that are taking place, as much as you're feeling it, right, and you're continuing to, and I do think for the cardinal signs, this is an incredibly important time when everything, right down to identity, to partnerships, to career, to home, everything is going through a shift, the way you understand your past, the way you understand where you're going. And I do think that this week, what is most pronounced to me is just the level of talks that are happening with people whom you're already connected to, people from your past, people in your family, as I spoke about in the monthly horoscopes, are going to be especially prominent right now. And you can expect yourself to have an understanding of exactly what is home to you and what no longer is. And I think that's where a lot of the power is going to come from for you. Once you can look at where it is that you have been and how it is now that you're in a very different place, then you'll be able to accept where it is that you're now heading. You know, I was thinking about this. I sort of had a little meditation on this where I was watching some interviews, some celebrity interviews, and they were talking about, you know, does success change you? Does money change you? And I thought what was really interesting about this conversation was, and I hope that somebody would say it, but I don't remember if I actually heard it, was I think that somebody sort of alluded to the fact that it isn't that success changes you, but it's that you have to change if you are going to welcome in success. You have to understand yourself and define yourself very differently, not in terms of the things that have held you down, but in terms of the possibility and potential if you're ever going to realize that possibility and potential. And so I share this with you because I do think it's one of those types of very sacred understanding type of moments happening for you now, where you are understanding how you identify, you are understanding where you've been with a different lens, and it's all part of helping you to move in a more empowered direction. A part of that includes understanding your past differently, and a part of that certainly involves understanding the direction in which you're meant to go differently as well. Ultimately, they do feed into each other, as I think as part of the long-term lesson you've been going through really since the start of the year. It's just now you're hitting sort of an accelerated moment in this. Let the shifts happen. It looks like, at least work-wise, one project, if you will, is done. One accomplishment is secured, and you can be glad and grateful for that as you see so many other possibilities and potential open up right in front of your eyes at the very same time. Hello, fabulous Aquarius. Well, this week, your ruling planet, Uranus, is going to be met by Mercury before Mercury starts having all kinds of conversations. And this tends to be sort of a once-in-a-year event that takes place. It's just that at this point in your life, with Uranus having these long-term conversations as part of the Cardinal Grand Cross, it's just that at this point, what's happening with this particular annual conversation becomes even more heightened because of this special configuration. And what this all means is, for those of you who are not students of astrology out there, what this essentially means is this is a light coming on really to the essence of you, to the core of you. And for you, given where Mercury and Uranus are in the sky, it's very much a light coming on a level of mind. If there's any projects that you've been working on wanting to develop, if you've been one of those people who's trying to figure out your voice and what that's going to be and how to go about it, this is a time that can make that much more clear to you, along with what it is that you can actually do to help yourself in the process. I do think that there is also value in understanding genuine friendship connections, okay, and those that are ultimately left best to be sort of spontaneous and kind of light and sort of on the surface. And as you make those very valuable distinctions, you will be able to understand how to best use not only your time, but also your brain power, your mental thought patterns, and your energy as well. And there's one other thing with this configuration I just want to call your attention to that I think is a likely possibility. I do think that for a percentage of you out there, what's likely to happen now is you get a sense of really clarity, as I said, on a level of mind, but really it's about where you are going and who's meant to be there with you and who isn't, and where it is that you are meant to be even as well. But because there's an element of action here, it isn't so much about where you're to be, but more as where it is that you are developing into, if you will, and how it is that you can fully embody that which you hope to develop more of and become more of as well. All of this is happening on a level of mind and on a level of insight and on a level of communication as well. And you are also one of those signs, as I said in the intro, you definitely are one of those signs that may find it is communication and messages that push buttons for you. But ultimately, those random posts that you end up seeing online and stuff, even they are part of the mystery, moving you towards greater love and greater wisdom. But more importantly, they're going to help you to understand where it is that you have been wasting mental energy, where it is that you have been really thinking about things or perceiving things or mulling over things, giving really your thoughts to things that no longer matter, things that are not a part of who you are now and who it is that you are going to be in the future, and the process that is a part of that as well. And so embrace that understanding. Ultimately, you know, they say life is long, but it's also really short at the same time. Given that, really what you give your thoughts to is so incredibly valuable, if only because this time here is so precious. And because this time here is precious, you deserve to think about and give your thoughts and energy to good things manifesting. And you will find that, especially when I look at as the energy progresses towards the end of the week, with this sort of financial lift kind of energy taking place for you towards the end of the week, I do think that that clarity that comes, that understanding that comes, helps you to understand really the vision, where you're going in terms of a more inspired future for yourself. And then that in turn is going to feed into an understanding of how all of that change that you're going through personally can be converted into greater prosperity as well. Hello, fabulous Pisces. Well, regardless of all this energy and all these changes that are taking place in the sky now, which I do think for you are going to speak to financial changes, that's going to be really big for you now. However, the fact that Venus is moving through your sign makes you feel like everything's going to be okay, and it really is. But this week, it is going to be Venus that speaks with Jupiter and Pluto in harmony. And this to me suggests that you are really coming to an understanding of where your blessings are going to come from, where your love is going to come from, and the priority you are going to place on love as well. I think there's also an element here of you just feeling happy and not being able to necessarily put your finger on why, because there are going to be just as many reasons not to be happy. There are going to be just as many reasons to be pessimistic, to feel down, given that a lot of people around us are going to be feeling kind of in a heightened emotional state. But for you, I think that there's an element there of faith. There's an element there of you just being chill about it all, of you being able to see what's happening. And it's not about you being detached, but it's about you actually seeing how ultimately this is all leading you somewhere very good, but also somewhere really beautiful. That's the thing when Venus moves through your sign, is you see beauty in everyone and everything, including yourself. And as a result of that, the universe affirms that, and you get a lot of affirmation as well. Embrace that possibility that is there for you. I think that you're going to find, as you navigate this week, as all this positive energy is there for you, you are going to find yourself moving in a direction not only of greater love and greater wisdom, but also of greater happiness as well, a greater sense of upliftment and a greater sense of possibility as well. Well, I will stop there. Thank you so much to everybody out there. It'll be a great week. Enjoy.